AITA for refusing to let my sister name her baby after me, even though she's upset about it. I, 32F, have a younger sister, Emily, 28F. We've always had a complicated relationship, mostly loving, but we clash a lot because we have very different personalities. I'm introverted, organized, and careful with my words, whereas Emily is outgoing, impulsive, and tends to speak before she thinks. Growing up, our parents always played favorites in ways that I didn't like, and I think that shaped some of the dynamics between us. I've always tried to maintain a peaceful relationship with her as adults, but occasionally, things get tense. About 6 months ago, Emily announced that she was pregnant. I was genuinely happy for her, and we started talking about baby names. She seemed excited to discuss options with me at first, but it quickly became clear she had her heart set on naming her baby girl after me. She kept dropping hints like, "Wouldn't it be cute if we named her after you?" Or "Imagine having a little mini-me in the family." At first, I laughed it off, thinking she was joking, but then she started making more serious comments. Here's the thing. I have always had a complicated relationship with my own name. It's very unique, and growing up, I was teased relentlessly for it. I also associate it strongly with my own identity, and I never imagined passing it on to anyone else. I told Emily that I wasn't comfortable with the idea of her using my name, and I tried to explain why. I said it wasn't about being controlling or not wanting her to honor me. It's just that I have a personal boundary with my name. I even offered some alternative names I liked that were similar in style, but not exactly the same. Emily didn't take it well. She immediately got defensive and accused me of being selfish. She said I was jealous of her baby and that I was hogging my own name. I tried to calmly explain that it wasn't about her, it was about my own feelings, but she got more upset. She started telling other family members about it, framing me as the mean sister who won't let me name my baby after her. Some of my relatives reached out to me, asking me to reconsider because Emily was so excited about it. I still said no, but the pressure was mounting and it was stressful. Things came to a head about a month ago. Emily called me crying, saying she felt like I didn't love her and that she wanted a piece of me in her child's life. She claimed that naming the baby after me would be a symbol of our bond, and that I was ruining it by refusing. I stayed calm and repeated my stance. I was happy for her, I loved her, but I could not allow her to use my name. She hung up angrily, and I haven't spoken to her much since. Recently, my mom called me and said Emily is very upset and considering changing the baby's middle name to my name without telling me. Or even worse, using it unofficially until I say something. Mom said I should just let it go for family harmony. I felt blindsided because I thought my boundary was clear, but I also didn't want to cause more conflict. I told my mom that if Emily did that, I would feel deeply hurt and disrespected. I've since been getting texts and messages from other family members saying things like, "You're making a mountain out of a molehill," or "It's just a name. Why are you being so stubborn?" I feel like I'm being painted as the villain in this situation, even though I'm trying to maintain my boundaries while also supporting Emily as much as I can. I understand that Emily is excited and wants to honor me in a very meaningful way, and I appreciate that, but it's not something I can be comfortable with. I've suggested other ways she could honor me, like using a name that a variation of mine, or incorporating something I love into the baby's nursery or life, but she seems fixated on the exact name. I'm starting to wonder if I'm overreacting. Am I really the asshole here for refusing to let my sister name her child after me? I'm trying to respect my own feelings while also not hurting hers, but it feels like no matter what I do, I'm going to be seen as the bad person. So Reddit, AITA for standing firm on my boundary about my name, even if it upsets my sister. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancé move in with us, even though my parents begged me to compromise. I, 29F, live in a medium-sized city with my parents in the house I grew up in. It's a 2-story house, and while I have my own room, The house itself is fairly cozy for 3 adults. My younger brother, Jake, 26, has been dating his fiancée, Laura, 25F, for about a year. Laura recently lost her job, and Jake suggested that maybe she could move in with us for a while until she got back on her feet. That's where everything started to unravel. When Jake first mentioned it, I said I needed time to think. I wasn't immediately saying no, but I also felt it was a huge request. I have a lot of my own routines, mental health needs, and work-from-home obligations that require quiet and privacy. Adding another adult, especially someone I barely know, felt like it could be disruptive. I told him I would consider it if we could set some clear rules and boundaries. I discussed it with my parents before giving a response. They were extremely excited about the idea and basically said that Laura moving in was the obvious choice and that I should be more accommodating. They argued that it was only temporary and that it would be rude and selfish to deny Jake and Laura help. I tried to explain my concerns about privacy, potential conflict, and the fact that Laura and I didn't know each other well enough to live together. My parents said I was overreacting and that it's just 1 year of your life. After thinking about it, I finally told Jake that I didn't feel comfortable with Laura moving in. I explained that our living situation is small, that I work from home and need quiet, and that I just wasn't ready for that kind of change. I offered an alternative, that we could help Laura find temporary housing nearby, or that we could give some financial assistance, but that I didn't feel capable of having her live with us. Jake was shocked and immediately called me selfish. He said I was choosing myself over family, and that I was letting her struggle instead of helping. I reminded him that helping doesn't have to mean living together, and that there are many other ways to provide support. He then started telling my parents behind my back that I was being difficult, and soon my parents were on my case constantly, texting and calling me to reconsider. Things escalated further when Laura decided to visit the house for a friendly chat with my parents about moving in. I agreed to meet them in the living room, but made it clear that this wasn't a negotiation about me changing my mind. The conversation was tense, to put mildly. Laura told me that she felt I was being cold and unwelcoming, and my parents nodded along and said that they hoped I could learn to be more accommodating. I reminded them all that boundaries are important, and that just because I could say yes doesn't mean I should. After that meeting, the tension at home was unbearable. My parents started making passive-aggressive comments about me, making life harder for everyone, and Jake avoided speaking to me except to send accusatory texts. Laura herself seemed frustrated with me and started posting on social media subtle comments about family struggles, tagging my brother, which I know is meant to guilt-trip me. I try to calmly explain to my parents that forcing someone to live with people they're not comfortable with can lead to resentment and broken relationships. I reminded them that I've been living here for years, paying my share of bills and maintaining the household, and I have the right to set reasonable limits. My parents got emotional, saying I wasn't being a good sister and that I was letting Laura down in time of need. Jake even accused me of trying to ruin their relationship before it's even fully started. I have offered compromises multiple times, helping with rent, assisting in job hunting, helping move belongings into a short-term rental, or even letting Laura stay for a weekend while she finds something permanent. But every compromise is met with, "It's not the same as living here. You don't understand what it's like to have someone struggle." I genuinely feel that my parents are pressuring me emotionally and using guilt to get me to do something I'm uncomfortable with. The worst part is that I've been called a terrible sister and a selfish person by friends who know the family. Even distant relatives have weighed in after hearing from my parents. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm wrong in everyone's eyes. At the same time, I'm stressed, anxious, and frankly a little resentful that I'm being treated as though my personal comfort and mental health don't matter. To clarify, this is not about money. I am not refusing to help financially or emotionally. I am refusing to cohabitate with someone I barely know because I fear it would create conflict, invade my privacy, and affect my mental health. I want to be supportive without compromising my boundaries in such a major way. At this point, I don't know how to repair relationships with my parents or Jake without feeling like I'm betraying myself. I feel like they framed the narrative in a way that I am heartless, even though I'm trying to be practical and considerate. So, AITA for refusing to let my brother's fiancée move in with us, even though my parents begged me to compromise. Character count, 6634. AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter stay with me during her summer break because of her behavior. I, 38M, have been married to my wife, Sarah, 36F, for 6 years. She has a daughter, Emily, from a previous relationship. Emily is 15. I've tried my best to be a supportive stepdad, but things have always been complicated. Sarah and I live about an hour away from Emily's father, who has custody for most of the school year, but allows Emily to spend extended time with us during summer and holidays. Normally, I enjoy spending time with Emily, but the last 2 summers have been difficult. Last year, Emily spent her entire summer break with us, and it was honestly exhausting. She would stay up until all hours playing video games, arguing about rules, and making passive-aggressive comments toward me. She refused to do chores that everyone else in the household was expected to do and would complain if we went anywhere that didn't revolve around her interests. Sarah tried to mediate and enforce rules, but it often ended up with her yelling at Emily and then sulking because she felt like she was the bad guy. By the end of the summer, I was completely burned out and dreading the next one. This year, Emily's father asked if she could spend the full summer with us again. Sarah immediately said yes without asking me first. I explained to her that I had serious reservations because I wasn't sure I could handle another summer of nonstop tension. I even suggested a compromise where Emily could come for half the summer instead. Sarah insisted that Emily had the right to see us and that it was unfair for me to limit her time. I eventually agreed reluctantly, thinking that maybe this summer would be different. 2 weeks into her stay, the situation deteriorated even faster than I had expected. Emily was refusing to follow any household rules. She would sneak out at night, ignore curfews, and make snide remarks at both me and Sarah. On one occasion, she hid her phone from us after being grounded for a week and went to a late-night party. When Sarah found out, she was furious with me for overreacting and accused me of being too controlling. I felt like I was stuck between her and Emily and could not maintain any kind of household order. After a particularly bad week where Emily refused to get out of bed, yelled at me for asking her to help clean the kitchen, and told Sarah she hated being here, I had a serious conversation with Sarah. I told her that I could not handle another summer like last year, and it was affecting my mental health. I suggested that maybe Emily should stay with her dad for the rest of the summer. Sarah got incredibly upset and accused me of being mean to Emily and trying to ruin her childhood. She said I was being selfish and that I needed to grow up. I refused to let Emily stay for the remainder of the summer. I told Sarah that she could make the decision to take Emily for herself, but I could not continue living in a house where I felt constantly disrespected and stressed. Sarah ended up taking Emily to her father's place the following day. Emily was crying, and Sarah gave me the silent treatment for almost a week. Since then, the atmosphere in our home has been tense. Sarah insists that I am the bad guy for denying her daughter happiness, while I feel like I am being forced to sacrifice my well-being for someone else's behavior. Sarah has even mentioned divorce, saying she can't be with someone who doesn't want to be a father to her child. I have tried to explain that I do love Emily, but her behavior this past year has made it impossible for me to host her without a plan for boundaries and consequences. I offered solutions like therapy, family counseling, or half-summers, but Sarah sees my refusal as a personal attack. I genuinely feel stuck. So, AITA for refusing to let my stepdaughter stay with me because I felt unable to manage her behavior. Additional context. I am not looking to punish Emily. I just want a healthy environment for myself and my wife. I do not want to abandon her either, but I also cannot compromise my mental health to the point of burnout every summer. I've tried to remain patient and calm, but the combination of Emily's behavior and Sarah's insistence has pushed me to a breaking point. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she completely disregarded my boundaries and my mental health. I, 28F, have always been close with my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 25F. Growing up, we were inseparable, but as we got older, our personalities started to clash more than I expected. I'm introverted, highly sensitive, and tend to overthink social situations, whereas Emily is outgoing, assertive, and sometimes a bit inconsiderate without realizing it. Our differences were manageable for the most part, but lately, they've been causing some serious tension. Emily got engaged about a year ago, and from the start, the wedding planning has been stressful for me. Emily and her fiancé, Jake, 27M, decided on a very small, intimate wedding with only about 50 people, which I was actually excited about. My problem started when Emily decided she wanted everyone involved in the wedding party to be part of every step of the planning process, which meant bridesmaids and groomsmen were expected to attend monthly meetings, help with DIY decorations, and even organize pre-wedding parties. Normally, I wouldn't mind helping, but I have severe anxiety that worsens in large social gatherings or when I feel put on display. I explained this to Emily early on, saying I would be willing to help in smaller ways or contribute financially, but I couldn't handle being constantly involved or being in the spotlight at events. She brushed it off, saying I was overreacting and that the wedding was a family affair, not a therapy session. I tried to compromise. I offered to help with small tasks like addressing invitations or helping with flower arrangement from home. She accepted initially, but soon she started assigning me bigger tasks without asking, like organizing a bridal shower and coordinating a welcome party for out-of-town guests. Every time I tried to set boundaries, she would guilt me, saying things like, "I thought you loved me. How can you not want to be part of the happiest moment of my life?" Her fiancé supported her, insisting I was being dramatic. The breaking point came a couple of weeks ago. Emily asked me to attend a bridal retreat that lasted a full weekend, including a spa day, yoga sessions, and a rehearsal dinner. I panicked because I knew being in such a large, high-energy environment would trigger a severe anxiety attack. I tried explaining this to her calmly, but she accused me of not caring about our relationship and threatened to uninvite me from the wedding altogether if I didn't participate. She said it would be embarrassing for the bride if her sister refused to take part in these events. I was crushed. I finally had to put my foot down and told her I would not be attending the retreat or any pre-wedding events that were beyond my comfort zone. I offered to attend the wedding itself if she could promise to respect my need for minimal social interaction during the day. I suggested sitting in a quiet corner during the ceremony, skipping the big group photos, and leaving early if necessary. Emily reacted angrily. She told me I was selfish and that my anxiety was no excuse to miss important family milestones. She started messaging our parents, telling them I was being unreasonable and ruining her special day. My parents were caught in the middle, feeling guilty for wanting me to be present, but also concerned about my mental health. My dad said, "You should try harder for your sister," while my mom said, "Maybe there's a compromise we're missing." I felt completely unsupported and increasingly stressed, which only fueled my anxiety. A few days later, Emily informed me she had already made the final seating chart and assigned me a role as a bridesmaid, without consulting me. When I reiterated that I couldn't fulfill this role, she blew up. She accused me of embarrassing her in front of her friends and fiancé, said I was the problem in the family, and even went so far as to threaten to cut me out of the wedding completely. At this point, I realized attending would likely result in a panic attack or a public confrontation, neither of which would be healthy. After talking it through with my therapist, I made the difficult decision to decline the invitation entirely. I sent Emily a heartfelt message explaining that I love her and want her to have an amazing day, but that attending would severely impact my mental health. I also offered to send a generous wedding gift and suggested a one-on-one celebration with her after the wedding, like a lunch or a small trip, so I could still celebrate without compromising my well-being. The response I received was worse than I expected. Emily accused me of sabotaging her wedding, choosing myself over family, and throwing away our sisterhood. She posted cryptic stories on social media about toxic family members and how some people just don't care, clearly referencing me without naming me. My parents are disappointed, but not fully supportive. My friends are on my side, saying I made the right choice for my mental health, but I feel guilty and isolated. I've been second-guessing myself constantly. On one hand, I know my mental health has to come first. On the other, I feel like I'm betraying my sister on the most important day of her life. Some friends argue that my sister's expectations were unreasonable and that I did everything possible to compromise, while others say family obligations sometimes require personal discomfort. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after setting clear boundaries that she chose to ignore. Character count, 6,583. AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a huge argument over my role in it. 28F. Have always been close to my sister, Emily, 31F. We grew up sharing a room, went through all the typical sisterly fights, but we always had each other's backs. So when Emily got engaged last year, I was genuinely excited for her. She got engaged to Tom, 33M, who seemed great at first, and things were moving fast toward a spring wedding. From the beginning, Emily was very particular about everything wedding-related. I mean very particular. I've helped with multiple weddings as a guest or in minor roles before, but nothing like this. Early on, she told me she wanted me to be her maid of honor. I felt honored, of course, and said yes. She seemed thrilled. Then came the first bit of tension. Emily is a bit controlling when it comes to appearances, and she made it very clear that she wanted her wedding party to look exactly a certain way. She sent me and the other bridesmaids a mood board with very specific dress styles, colors, hairdos, shoes, even nail polish shades. I try to be flexible, but the dress she chose for me was $600, which is way more than I can comfortably spend. I told her this, and she said, "Well, you're the maid of honor. You should budget for it. It's important." I agreed to compromise and found a dress that was similar but slightly cheaper. She seemed okay with it after I explained, but I could feel the tension brewing. Next came the bachelor/bachelorette party planning. Emily expected me to organize the bachelorette party entirely. She said she trusted me to make it unforgettable. I spent weeks planning a weekend trip with all her friends, booking hotels, activities, and dinners. I even had to cover some upfront costs myself because of deposits and reservations. I thought she'd be grateful, but when I presented the itinerary, she said, "I'm not sure this is what I want. I wanted more of a spa vibe and less nightlife." I tried to explain that everyone we invited is under 30 and enjoys a bit of nightlife, but she insisted. I ended up canceling reservations and rebooking, which cost me even more money. As we got closer to the wedding date, Emily started micromanaging everything. She had strong opinions about what I should say in my maid of honor speech, how I should act during the ceremony, how I should handle seating arrangements, and even what kind of gift I should give her. Every time I tried to offer my own suggestion or compromise, she got frustrated and said, "I just want everything to be perfect. I don't understand why you can't follow my lead." The breaking point came 2 weeks before the wedding. Emily called me, clearly upset, and said, "I need you to lose 10 pounds for the dress to fit properly. I'm really worried it will ruin the pictures if the dresses don't look right." I was shocked. I have never had an eating disorder or been particularly self-conscious about my body, but being told this by my sister felt cruel and humiliating. I told her that I would not change my body for anyone, not even her, and that I would wear the dress as it fit or not participate at all. Emily completely lost it. She said I was being selfish, that I was ruining her big day, and that I didn't care about her happiness. Tom tried to mediate, but Emily was furious. Over the next week, there were a lot of heated texts and calls. She accused me of being dramatic, ungrateful, and difficult. I tried to reason with her, saying that I loved her, I wanted to support her, but I couldn't compromise my self-respect and mental health for a single day. She said, "If you can't do this for me, I don't want you at the wedding." He stayed firm. I told her that if she wanted me to attend, I would come as her sister and a guest, not as the maid of honor. She said that was fine, but then immediately sent me a new message saying, "No, actually, I don't want you at all. You've made it impossible for me to celebrate. Don't come." I have not talked to her since. I feel sad, angry, and conflicted. On one hand, she's my sister, and I love her. I don't want to ruin her wedding. On the other hand, I feel completely disrespected, manipulated, and shamed. I've confided in some mutual friends, and most of them think Emily went too far, but a few say I should have just gone along with her request to keep the peace. I'm still unsure if I'm the asshole here. I feel like I tried to be supportive in every way I could, planning the bachelorette party, organizing events, giving up my time and money, but there seems to be no pleasing her. I also don't want to compromise my self-worth or mental health for one day, even if it's her wedding. So, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after she made unreasonable demands and body shamed me, even though it means cutting off contact with her for now. AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house during Thanksgiving after he insulted my cooking. So this is going to be a long one, but I'll try to lay it out clearly. I, 32F, have always loved hosting holidays. I grew up in a large family where food and gatherings were a big deal, and I've kept that tradition alive with my own friends and family. I'm currently single and live alone in a small house that's just cozy enough for me, but I make it work every holiday. My younger sister, Emma, 28F, recently started dating a guy named Ryan, 30M. I had met him a couple of times before, and my initial impression was fine, nothing special, but not terrible either. Over the past few months, though, Emma has made it clear that Ryan doesn't get along with my family, mainly because he's very sarcastic and tends to make jokes that are more cutting than funny. Fast forward to last week. I sent out my usual Thanksgiving invite to family, and of course, Emma wanted to bring Ryan. I reminded her that I have a small space and would need to know if he's actually staying for dinner or planning to crash at my place because I don't have extra beds. She said he wouldn't stay over, which was fine. On Thanksgiving Day, everything started well. I spent the entire morning preparing a traditional spread: turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, cranberry sauce, green beans, a pumpkin pie, and a pecan pie. I take pride in my cooking, and most people compliment it every year. Dinner started, and right away, Ryan began making comments. At first, it was small stuff like, "Oh, the turkey looks a bit dry," which I try to laugh off, assuming he was joking. Then he said, "I guess cranberry sauce is just a sugar bomb." Huh? I don't get why people like this, while poking at it with his fork. My family tried to ignore it, but I was getting annoyed. The breaking point came when he took a bite of the stuffing and loudly said, "Wow, did you just throw breadcrumbs and hope for the best?" I froze, and my mom tried to intervene, saying something like, "It's homemade. It's a tradition." He just smirked and said, "Yeah, well, tradition doesn't equal good." I felt my face go red. I had spent the entire morning cooking this meal, and he was sitting there criticizing every part of it. I politely asked him to stop making comments about the food, but he shrugged and said, "I'm just being honest. If you can't take criticism, maybe don't host." At that point, I lost it a little. I told him that I spent hours making a meal for my family, and that his comments were not constructive. They were insulting. He laughed and said, "Lighten up, it's just food." I told him that if he couldn't respect my effort, he was welcome to leave. Emma jumped in, trying to defend him, saying he didn't mean it, but I wasn't having it. I told her that this wasn't about being mean-spirited. It was about basic respect. At that point, Ryan got up and said, "Fine, I'll just stay here tonight since you're so dramatic. I'm not going home yet." I told him absolutely not. I explained that my house was not a hotel and that he was not welcome to stay over, especially after the way he had treated me and my cooking. Emma started crying and yelling at me, saying I was being unreasonable and ruining the holiday. My mom tried to mediate, saying maybe I should have just let him stay, but I stood firm. Ryan left in a huff, saying I was childish and that I ruined Thanksgiving for everyone. After dinner, my family did enjoy the meal without him, and they thanked me multiple times for hosting. Emma, however, hasn't spoken to me since Thanksgiving. She keeps texting me that I was too harsh and that I should apologize for not being welcoming to her boyfriend. I haven't responded because I feel like apologizing would imply that I was wrong for setting boundaries after he insulted me and my cooking. I've had a couple of friends say maybe I overreacted by not letting him stay, but the way I see it, he disrespected me in my own home, and that's not something I should have to tolerate, especially on a holiday that I host and care deeply about. So, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay at my house after he insulted my cooking. Additional context: I've hosted many holidays before, including Christmas and birthdays, and I've never had an issue with anyone staying over. This is purely about Ryan's behavior. I also want to mention that he has a history of being sarcastic and critical toward others, according to Emma, but I didn't realize it would be this extreme. I feel like I need to set boundaries, but my sister thinks I should have swallowed my pride and let him stay anyway. I'm torn between standing my ground and maintaining family harmony. Has anyone been in a similar situation where someone disrespected your home or effort and you had to say no? I want to hear honest perspectives. AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding after she completely disregarded my feelings and plans. I, 32F, have always been the responsible one in my family. My younger sister, Emma, 28F, is the kind of person who dives headfirst into things without thinking about how her choices affect others. For years, I've been there to clean up messes, mediate fights, and essentially act as the adult in situations she's created. Until now, I didn't really mind. It's family, and I genuinely love her. But something happened recently that made me question whether I should continue putting her needs above my own. A few months ago, Emma got engaged to her fiancé, Alex, 30M. They've been together for about 3 years. Initially, I was thrilled for her. I even offered to help with wedding planning because I have experience organizing events, and she doesn't. Early on, I suggested we sit down and outline some things she wanted for the wedding. Venue preferences, guest count, general vibe. I figured this would give me a clear understanding of what she was envisioning, so I could help make it happen without stress for either of us. This is where the trouble began. Emma said she trusted me completely to handle the details, and that she wanted me to just take care of it because planning made her anxious. I accepted, believing that helping would be a bonding experience rather than a chore. I started scouting venues, comparing caterers, and drafting a rough budget. I even suggested a few creative ideas for themes and seating arrangements. I was careful to keep her preferences in mind, and I constantly updated her so she wouldn't feel out of the loop. After about a month, I invited her to a meeting with one of the venues to get her input. She showed up and immediately dismissed nearly everything I had suggested. The caterer I booked? Too fancy. The venue I loved? Boring and too expensive. The theme? Way too complicated. I felt blindsided because she had previously said she trusted me to make the decisions and now was rejecting them wholesale. I tried to calmly explain that I had based my choices on the conversations we had and the things she had expressed interest in. She became defensive and said I was trying to control her wedding and that she just wanted me to plan without getting in the way. I tried to clarify that I wasn't trying to control anything. I was literally following the blueprint she had given me, but she stormed out, saying she would handle things herself. I was upset, but I backed off. That should have been the end of it, but she didn't stop. Instead, she went ahead and made decisions that contradicted everything she had previously told me she wanted. For example, she initially wanted a small, intimate ceremony with about 50 people. Then she invited over 200 guests without telling me. She said she changed her mind and wanted something grander. I tried to express that this was logistically complicated since I had already reserved a venue for 60, but she brushed me off. The breaking point came when she asked me to host the wedding at my house. Now, I live in a modest 3-bedroom townhouse. I love my home, but it's not a venue. I explained that it simply wouldn't accommodate the number of guests she now wanted, and that it would be financially and emotionally draining for me to prepare for such an event in a space that isn't built for it. She said she was counting on me to make it happen because I'm the only one who can keep things organized. I reminded her that she had initially asked me to help plan based on a smaller guest list, and now she had completely changed the scope. She accused me of being selfish for not wanting to host the wedding, and I told her that her expectations were unreasonable. Things escalated when she suggested that if I didn't host, she would probably just not have me involved at all and would invite everyone I know to the wedding but leave me out of the process entirely. I felt cornered. I love my sister, but this felt manipulative. I have a demanding job, I live alone, and I have a small income that doesn't allow me to throw a large-scale wedding at my house without serious financial strain. I also need to maintain my mental health, and the idea of taking on this entire event while she insists on doing things her way sounded like a recipe for disaster. So I said no. I told her that I would continue helping with advice and recommendations, but that I could not host the wedding or take full responsibility for planning it at this scale. She blew up. She accused me of not caring about her, of being petty, and of ruining her special day. My parents got involved at this point, and they sided with her, saying I should just compromise and that it would mean so much to Emma. I tried to explain the financial and emotional realities, but they insisted that family comes first. Since then, Emma has been giving me the silent treatment and posting passive-aggressive messages about how some people only care when it's convenient on social media. My parents keep asking if I've had a change of heart, and my friends are divided. Some say I should just host to keep the peace. Others say I have every right to set boundaries. I feel stuck. On one hand, I don't want to hurt my sister on what's supposed to be one of the happiest days of her life. On the other hand, I feel like she's disregarded my boundaries, manipulated me with guilt, and is expecting me to take on responsibilities that are beyond reasonable. I have offered help in ways that don't involve completely taking over the wedding, but she refuses to accept anything less than full involvement from me in the way she wants. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to host my sister's wedding and taking a stand on what I can reasonably contribute? Or am I the bad sister here for prioritizing my limits over her dream day? Character count, 6521. AITA for refusing to give my sister's boyfriend a place to stay even though he's family now. I, 32F, have always had a complicated relationship with my sister, Amanda, 28F. Growing up, we were close in some ways, but she's always had a habit of bulldozing through boundaries if it suited her. I moved out for college and then settled across the country for work. Amanda stayed in her hometown, and while we kept in touch, our lives diverged a lot. Fast forward to last year, Amanda met Ryan, 30M. From the story she told me, he seemed nice enough, funny, charming, supportive, but I've only ever met him a couple of times in passing at family events. Amanda got serious with him pretty fast, and within a year, she was calling him family and insisting I include him in everything. Normally, I would be happy for her, but something about the way she talks about him always rubbed me the wrong way. She's a very dramatic person, and she tends to exaggerate situations to make people look bad or make her look heroic. Anyway, my story actually starts 2 months ago. I live in a 2-bedroom apartment with my roommate, Julia, 31F. We have a good setup, she's tidy, considerate, and we split rent and chores fairly. Our building doesn't allow long-term guests without permission, and frankly, we like our privacy. Amanda called me one morning, sounding frantic. She and Ryan had some sort of falling out. They had gotten into a huge fight, and she had kicked him out. She said he had nowhere to go, all his friends were busy, and he was basically family now, so it's your responsibility. She begged me to let him stay at my apartment for a few weeks. I froze. A few weeks? That's not a guest. That's a roommate. I explained to her that I didn't have the space, it would violate my lease, and I couldn't just take in someone I barely knew. I also pointed out that Julia had not agreed to this, and it would completely disrupt our lives. Amanda got upset and said I was being selfish, heartless, and that if I didn't help, she didn't know what she would do. She also added that family always helps family, and that since Ryan was part of our family now, this was a no-brainer. I tried to reason with her, saying that even if he stayed, he couldn't just be there for weeks without contributing financially or helping out, and that I didn't feel comfortable taking on that responsibility. She screamed at me over the phone, calling me cold, immature, and a terrible sister. Then she hung up. A week later, she called again, this time saying she had tried to find other arrangements, but nothing had worked. Ryan was at a hotel, and the cost was overwhelming. She asked again, this time more pleading than before. I told her firmly no. I also talked to Julia, who backed me up completely, saying she didn't want anyone staying in the apartment long term, especially someone she didn't know. Amanda was furious. She started sending me long texts detailing all the ways I was failing as a sister and as a human being. She even started messaging our family, framing me as the villain who wouldn't help her poor boyfriend, who was now like a brother to me. Some relatives called me, asking why I wouldn't help, which was exhausting and stressful. Things escalated when Amanda showed up at my apartment unannounced. She claimed she was just dropping off some of Ryan's things, but when I answered the door, She immediately tried to argue with me again about letting him stay. I told her firmly to leave, which she did, but she left a barrage of voicemails, texts, and even a few messages on Julia's phone. At this point, I started feeling guilty. Some part of me wondered if I was being too rigid or selfish. My sister has always been dramatic, but she's family, and she was clearly stressed. I thought maybe I could help in another way, like helping Ryan find a sublet or a temporary Airbnb, but she didn't seem interested in any alternatives. The final straw came last week. Amanda sent me a passive-aggressive message saying that because I wouldn't help, Ryan had to sleep in his car, and he was so disappointed in me. She included a photo of his car with the back seats folded down. Hey friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. AITA for refusing to give my sister's boyfriend a place to stay after he forgot his wallet at a family gathering. I, 28F, have a younger sister, Emily, 24F, who has always had a flair for drama. She's a sweet person, but she tends to exaggerate situations and expects everyone to jump at her every request. I love her, but living through her dramatic phases can be exhausting. Our parents are divorced. I live closer to my mom, who hosts most family gatherings, so I usually end up coordinating or attending more often than I'd like. Recently, Emily started dating someone new, Mark, 26M. He seemed fine at first, polite, quiet, not too imposing. I didn't feel a deep connection with him, but I didn't have any reason to dislike him either. About a month into their relationship, Emily invited him to a family brunch at my mom's house. I was hesitant, but agreed because I thought it would be polite to meet him in a relaxed setting. The brunch went mostly okay, but towards the end, Mark announced that he had forgotten his wallet and had no way to pay for his part of the food or even contribute to gas money. I offered to cover a small amount, but Emily stepped in and said, "It's fine, I'll handle it." I thought that was the end of it. Fast forward to the next weekend, Emily and Mark were supposed to come over to my apartment for a casual game night with a few friends. I live in a one-bedroom apartment, so hosting more than 6 people is already a tight squeeze. Before the night started, Mark texted me directly asking if he could stay over because it's too far to drive back and I forgot my wallet. I was taken aback. We weren't even drinking excessively, and the night was just casual. I replied politely that my apartment wasn't really set up for overnight guests, and I didn't have a couch that could comfortably accommodate someone. I suggested they call a rideshare or stay at a nearby hotel. Emily called me immediately after reading my text and started arguing. She said that I was being unreasonable and rude for not letting Mark stay over. According to her, since it was her boyfriend and we're family adjacent, it was my responsibility to help him out. I tried explaining that my apartment is literally a studio, that I'm not comfortable with overnight guests I don't know well, and that expecting me to accommodate him at the last minute was unfair. She countered with, "So you'd rather have him stranded than help a member of our family? You're so selfish." Her tone got louder and more dramatic as she kept talking, accusing me of not supporting her relationship and being a bad sister. Mark stayed silent during the call, but I could hear him muttering, "It's okay," in the background. I stuck to my position and didn't let him stay over. I ended up driving him halfway to his place since I felt guilty leaving him stranded at night, which was inconvenient but not impossible. Emily was furious and barely spoke to me for a week. A week later, during a group chat with some mutual friends, Emily started venting about me, painting me as cold and uncaring. According to her, I was morally obligated to let Mark stay over because he's part of the extended family now. Some friends agreed with her, saying I should have been more accommodating, while others thought she was overreacting. The issue escalated when our parents got involved. My mom called me and asked why I hadn't let Mark stay, implying that I was creating tension in the family. I explained my reasoning calmly, highlighting that I wasn't comfortable hosting someone I barely knew overnight and that my living space is limited. My mom seemed conflicted, but ultimately sided with Emily, saying, "He's dating your sister, and sometimes you have to make sacrifices for family." I feel like my boundaries are being completely ignored. I have no problem helping Emily when it's reasonable, like covering food when she genuinely forgets her wallet, but expecting me to accommodate her boyfriend overnight without prior notice feels like an overstep. I also don't think it's fair that she's putting the moral weight of the situation on me, as if refusing Mark's request is a character flaw. Since then, Emily has been cold towards me, and Mark barely talks to me unless Emily is around. Our family dynamics are awkward now, and I've been wondering if I really handled this the wrong way. Am I truly the asshole here for not letting her boyfriend stay over, or is she blowing this out of proportion? I want to maintain my boundaries without completely alienating my sister, but it feels like any attempt to assert them is met with guilt-tripping or accusations of being selfish. I also don't want to set a precedent where every time she or her friends have an emergency, I'm expected to open my home. I'm genuinely torn because I love my sister and want to support her relationship, but not at the expense of my comfort and personal space. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister's boyfriend stay over after he forgot his wallet? Character count, 6,387 if you want. I can make an even longer version closer to 7,000 characters, adding more family drama and backstory for extra Reddit realism. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me after an accident. I, 32F, have always been very independent. I live alone in a modest but comfortable apartment in the city where I work as a graphic designer. My sister, Emily, 29F, has been dating her fiancé, Jake, 31M, for about 3 years. Emily and I have always been close, but Jake and I have never really clicked. He's charming and funny in small doses, but he can also be very manipulative and passive-aggressive, which I've noticed a lot of friends quietly point out as well. About 2 months ago, Emily was in a minor car accident. Thankfully, she wasn't seriously hurt, but she did break her leg and is now on crutches. Because she lives in a townhouse with stairs, she reached out to me for help. She asked if she could stay at my place temporarily until she could navigate her house safely. Naturally, I said yes. I enjoy helping family, and I genuinely didn't mind her staying for a couple of weeks. Here's where things started to get complicated. Emily insisted that Jake stay with us too. She framed it as it would be nice for him to keep me company and help around the apartment, which on the surface seemed reasonable. I hesitated because my apartment is small and I had never lived with a partner or a family member before. I told Emily I was uncomfortable with having Jake there long-term and suggested she stay alone, but she guilt-tripped me, saying she couldn't manage everything on her own and that she would feel lonely. I reluctantly agreed, thinking it was temporary and she needed support. At first, everything seemed fine. Jake helped with moving furniture, making meals, and bringing groceries. But over the next 2 weeks, subtle things started to bother me. He criticized how I organized my apartment, commented on my cooking in ways that were meant to be funny, and made jokes about my work-from-home setup. I brushed it off, thinking I was being sensitive. Then it got worse. He started leaving his laundry in my living room, took my food from the fridge without asking, and started borrowing items like my blender and laptop charger without returning them. I started feeling like my personal space was being invaded, but I didn't say anything because Emily was relying on him. After 3 weeks, he started suggesting that my apartment would be better with some improvements, and at one point even mentioned, in a joking but serious tone, that I should consider moving out so Emily and he could have a fresh start in the city. I laughed nervously and said no, but he shrugged and didn't drop the subject. I finally realized that having him here was more than just a minor inconvenience. It was starting to feel like my home was being taken over. I brought it up with Emily, explaining that I needed my space back and that I was okay helping her, but Jake staying indefinitely wasn't something I could allow. Emily flipped. She said I was being unfair and selfish, that she couldn't manage on her own, and that Jake was a big help. She even suggested that I was exaggerating how much he was bothering me. I told her that the help I was willing to provide didn't come with turning my home into a permanent shared space with someone I'm not comfortable living with. Emily got very upset and called me ungrateful, even saying I was prioritizing my comfort over family. I tried to compromise, suggesting that Jake could visit during the day or help run errands, but sleep and personal space needed to remain mine. She refused. Things reached a boiling point last week. Jake started hinting that I was rude for not letting him settle in properly, and even told me that he was considering talking to our parents about how hostile I was being. Emily joined in, saying I was being dramatic and that a real sister would just let her fiancé stay temporarily. I ended up yelling at both of them and told them to leave. Emily left my apartment in tears, and Jake was sulking, saying I had created unnecessary tension. I haven't spoken to either of them much since then, and Emily has been calling me nonstop, texting that I'm breaking the family apart. I've talked to a few mutual friends about this, and most are on my side, saying that Jake's behavior was overstepping boundaries and that I was reasonable to insist on my home being my sanctuary. However, Emily has made a few posts on social media painting me as the villain, saying I kicked them out when her leg was broken, and now some distant relatives are messaging me about being cold and unhelpful. I understand that my sister is injured and probably feels helpless, but I also feel like my boundaries were completely ignored. I offered help in a way that felt reasonable to me, but I can't let someone, especially someone I don't trust, live in my space indefinitely. AITA for refusing to let my sister's fiancé move in with me after her accident. Character count, 6,385 if you want. I can also draft a slightly longer version closer to 7,000 characters with a few more dramatic twists and extra dialogue to make it read even more like a viral Reddit post. Do you want me to do that? AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after she tried to sabotage my relationship. 28F, have always been close to my younger sister, Emily, 25F, but over the past few years, things have gotten complicated. I'm engaged to my fiancé, Mark, 30M, and we've been planning our wedding for about a year now. The thing is, Emily has always had a history of being manipulative and extremely competitive, even with me. Our parents are very hands-off, so she has never faced much consequence for her actions, and honestly, I think she thrives on chaos. The first red flag was when Mark and I got engaged. Emily, who had been in a long-term relationship herself, seemed excited at first, but then she started making these passive-aggressive comments. She would say things like, "Are you sure he's the one? People get married too fast," or, "I hope you're not rushing into this like I saw so many people do." I try to brush it off as jealousy or nerves, but it was uncomfortable. A few months later, I caught her trying to sneak into Mark's social media accounts to check on him. She claimed she was just curious about his past relationships, but she clearly overstepped boundaries. I confronted her, told her it was completely inappropriate, and that I expected her to respect my relationship. She apologized, but then started sending Mark weird, flirty messages online under a fake account. I didn't find out until Mark noticed some messages from a profile that seemed familiar. When he asked, she denied everything, and it created a huge fight between him and me. Eventually, we traced it back to her, and she admitted she had done it out of curiosity and because she wanted to see if I was making a mistake. That was the last straw for me. I decided to limit her involvement in wedding planning. I didn't tell her about certain things, like dress choices for the bridal party and seating arrangements. She noticed and started crying to my parents, claiming I was excluding her from the family and treating her like a child. I explained calmly to everyone what had happened with Mark and why I didn't feel comfortable involving her in wedding planning, but my parents seemed torn. They were angry at her behavior, but also didn't want to cause a family fight. They eventually sided with me, but Emily has made it clear she's still upset. Things escalated last month when I finalized the guest list. I told Emily she wasn't invited. Her reaction was explosive. She yelled at me, saying I was destroying our family and being cruel. She sent texts to my extended family, telling them I was being unreasonable and mean. Some distant relatives have reached out to me, hinting I should reconsider. I have not changed my mind. I don't want someone who actively tried to sabotage my relationship at my wedding. My wedding is supposed to be a celebration of love and trust, and she broke that trust multiple times. Emily has now been posting passive-aggressive things on social media, saying things like, "Some people are happy to hurt their own family for fun," and tagging friends who know both of us. She's even told mutual friends that I can't handle family and that I'm overreacting. My fiancé, Mark, is supportive, but my parents are starting to feel guilty, which only makes me more frustrated. I've tried to talk to Emily one last time, explaining that her behavior was unacceptable and that I don't feel safe having her at my wedding, but she refuses to listen. She says I've turned into our mother and that I'm selfish. I know some people might say I'm overreacting or being too harsh by completely cutting her out, but I honestly feel like it's about protecting my relationship and my sanity. I can't have someone at my wedding who has repeatedly tried to undermine it. My friends are supportive, and they say I'm justified, but the tension with my family is unbearable. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to invite my sister to my wedding after everything that happened? AITA for refusing to let my sister's husband move into my house, even though she thinks I'm being unreasonable? This all started about 2 years ago when my sister, Rachel, and I bought a duplex together. We were both single at the time and thought it would be a fun way to invest in property while also having each other's company close by. I live in a larger unit. She lives in the smaller one. Everything was fine until she started dating someone seriously about a year ago. Rachel has always been a bit impulsive when it comes to relationships. She meets someone, and it's full speed ahead. Her current boyfriend, Jason, was no exception. At first, I liked him well enough. He seemed polite and relatively normal, though a little intense. Over the past year, I started noticing small things that were concerning. He is controlling in subtle ways and has a tendency to belittle Rachel, usually disguised as jokes. I've tried to stay out of it, assuming Rachel is an adult and can handle her own relationships. But things got worse when they started talking about moving in together. Now, Rachel's duplex is quite small. It's a 2-bedroom apartment with 1 bathroom and a tiny living room. When she first mentioned that she and Jason were thinking of moving in together, I thought she meant just her place, which I assumed would be fine. But she quickly clarified that she actually wanted Jason to move into my unit with me. According to her, it's just temporary because his apartment lease is up and he doesn't want to be homeless. She insists that since I have a larger space, it makes sense for him to live with me. I was completely blindsided. I've lived alone for years, and I value my privacy. I also didn't feel comfortable having someone I barely know living in my home, especially since I've already noticed behavior from Jason that sets off alarm bells for me. I told Rachel I wasn't comfortable with it. I explained that my unit is my personal space, that I don't even know him that well, and that I wasn't willing to compromise my living situation just to accommodate her boyfriend. She got upset, saying I was being selfish and that family is supposed to help each other out. When I refused, she tried to negotiate, saying that Jason would pay rent and help with bills. I told her that wasn't the issue. I don't want a roommate who isn't someone I chose, and I certainly don't want a roommate who might create tension or discomfort in my own home. I also brought up some of the small but concerning behaviors I'd observed in Jason over the past year, like the way he subtly criticizes Rachel's decisions and insists on controlling aspects of her life. Rachel brushed it off and said I was being judgmental and overreacting. Things escalated when she started talking about what kind of sister I am and suggesting that I should prioritize family over personal comfort. She even brought our parents into it, calling them to complain that I was refusing to help out and painting me as unreasonable. My parents actually backed me up, which surprised Rachel and made her more frustrated. She accused me of turning into a control freak and making her life miserable because I wouldn't just let Jason stay temporarily. I thought things might calm down, but instead, Rachel started passive-aggressively visiting more often and trying to create situations where Jason would come over unexpectedly, like when she had an appointment nearby or needed emergency help with groceries. Every time he comes over, I feel uncomfortable and on edge. I even caught him snooping through my things once, though he tried to brush it off as just looking for something to help Rachel with. That incident really solidified my stance that he shouldn't be living in my unit. Recently, Rachel started posting on social media about how she's being sabotaged by me and how family should always stick together. Some mutual friends have started questioning my stance, which has been frustrating. I've tried explaining calmly that it's about boundaries and comfort, not a personal vendetta, but it doesn't seem to be sinking in. The tension between us has become so bad that I'm worried about my mental health and my ability to enjoy my own home. I've considered selling my unit or moving out myself just to avoid constant conflict, which is something I never imagined I'd do. I've even started to dread family gatherings because I know Rachel will bring up Jason or try to guilt-trip me about helping out. I keep replaying the situation in my head, wondering if I'm really being unreasonable. Am I wrong for refusing to let my sister's husband move into my home, even temporarily? I love Rachel, and I want to support her, but I also feel like my boundaries are being completely ignored. I'm torn because I don't want this to destroy our relationship, but I also can't see myself compromising my personal space and peace of mind for someone who I don't trust and don't feel comfortable living with. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to let Jason live with me. Or should I just suck it up for the sake of family? AITA for refusing to change my wedding plans after my future in-laws demanded it. This is going to be long, so bear with me. I, 28F, have been with my fiancé, Mark, 30M, for 6 years, and we recently got engaged. The wedding planning has been mostly smooth, but I've hit a major roadblock with his family, and I'm honestly not sure if I'm being unreasonable. When we first got engaged, I made it very clear that I wanted an intimate wedding, around 80 people, mostly close friends and family. I've always loved small gatherings, and honestly, I wanted a day that felt personal, not like some giant spectacle. Mark was on board, and we started looking for venues and dates. We found this beautiful small chapel on the outskirts of our town that fit our vibe perfectly. It's quaint, cozy, and exactly what I envisioned. The reception is at a small local restaurant with private rooms. Everything felt perfect. Then came the conversation with his family. Mark has 3 siblings, all of whom are married, and a large extended family. His parents have always been the type who host huge events, constantly entertaining, and they seemed thrilled when we got engaged. When we mentioned our guest list, his mother, Linda, immediately raised concerns. According to her, an 80-person wedding was almost disrespectful to their family. She insisted that we needed at least 150 people, including distant cousins, coworkers, and basically anyone they've ever met. She framed it as celebrating the family properly and kept repeating that it would be embarrassing if we didn't invite certain people. At first, Mark tried to mediate, but he told me later that he was leaning toward me in this argument. The problem escalated when Linda started making specific demands about the venue. She wanted a big, fancy hall, preferably one with a ballroom that could accommodate 300 people, even though we don't want that. She even suggested hiring a full orchestra and a fireworks display, all within our budget, which I politely pointed out would be impossible. That's when I realized this wasn't going to be a simple, we want more people argument. This was a full-on rewrite the wedding I've envisioned situation. I told Linda that I appreciated her input, but the wedding was ultimately ours. I tried to explain that our priority was intimacy and personal touches, not size or grandeur. I also mentioned budget constraints, because I don't want to start our marriage in debt. That did not go over well. She got very emotional and said I was being selfish and disrespectful to the family. She even went so far as to say that if I didn't invite everyone she wanted, she might not attend the wedding at all. She sent Mark multiple texts, and I eventually asked him to block her for the sake of my sanity, because I kept reading message after message telling me I was ruining family traditions and setting a terrible precedent for future events. Mark and I had a long conversation about it. I explained that while I understood his family's perspective, I had spent my entire adult life dreaming about a small, meaningful wedding, and I was not willing to compromise on that. I also reminded him that while he loves his family, he's marrying me, and our wedding should reflect both of us, not just his parents' expectations. He agreed with me, but we were both worried about the fallout. The real conflict started when I sent out the guest list. Linda called me screaming, accusing me of being controlling and manipulative, and saying I was trying to erase the family. She insisted that my refusal to invite more people was going to cause long-term damage to family relationships. She even threatened to write a letter to other relatives telling them not to attend, which I thought was extreme. Mark tried to intervene, but every time he spoke, she turned it into him being brainwashed by me. At this point, I was just trying to breathe without my phone buzzing every 5 minutes. Things got even messier when my own family tried to step in. My mom suggested compromising by adding 20 more people, but I refused. I felt like if I started giving in to everyone's demands, I wouldn't even recognize the wedding by the time we actually got there. I've worked so hard on keeping things simple, choosing a local florist, hand-picking decorations, making our own playlists, and now it felt like that vision was under siege. A week later, Mark and I had to sit down with Linda and his dad. I tried my best to remain calm and rational, explaining that our wedding is not about exclusion, but about creating a meaningful experience for us and our guests. I pointed out that the people on our guest list include everyone we are closest to, and that limiting it is not a reflection of how much we value the extended family. It's just the way we envisioned our day. Linda was having none of it. She started crying, saying we were destroying the family legacy and accusing me of turning Mark against them. His dad was quieter but nodded along, clearly siding with his wife in an attempt to avoid confrontation. Mark supported me the whole time, which I'm grateful for, but I could feel tension in the room. Linda left early, saying she would think about whether to come, and that she couldn't support what we were doing. Mark and I returned home, feeling exhausted and emotionally drained. Now, the wedding is 3 months away, and the tension hasn't eased. Mark's siblings and some extended family members have started dropping subtle hints that we should reconsider the guest list. I haven't budged, and Mark keeps reassuring me that it's our day, not theirs, but I can see he's stressed because he doesn't want to deal with his mother's continued outrage. I've even started questioning myself, wondering if I'm being unreasonable, but every part of me still says this is our wedding, and no one should get to dictate the size or style of it except us. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to expand the guest list and change the venue to appease my future in-laws? I'm trying to be fair and considerate, but at the same time, I feel like if I give in now, I'll be setting a precedent where every family event will be hijacked by their demands. AITA for refusing to lend my sister my apartment for a month, even though she says she deserves it more than me. So, this is going to be long, but I'll try to keep it as organized as possible. I, 28F, have been living in a small, one-bedroom apartment in a big city for about 3 years now. It's nothing luxurious, but it's mine, I pay the rent, and I've worked really hard to make it a space that I'm comfortable in. I share the building with mostly young professionals, and it's quiet, safe, and convenient for work. My sister, Emma, 31F, has a very different life from mine. She's married, has 2 kids, and lives in a suburban area that's a 2-hour drive from the city. Her husband works in tech, and while their life seems stable, they've been going through a lot of stress lately because of his job and some family drama that I won't go into too much detail about. A couple of weeks ago, Emma called me out of the blue and told me that she and her family were desperate to get away for a month. Apparently, her in-laws are coming to stay with them, and her husband's job has become extra demanding, so she wants to escape the chaos with her kids. She said she had this perfect plan and was hoping I could let her stay in my apartment while she worked remotely and kept her kids out of the way of everyone else. She phrased it in a way that made it sound like I was morally obligated to say yes because she's my sister and has had a really tough year. I was honestly shocked. I live alone in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. There's barely space for me, let alone her and her 2 kids, and definitely not for all of them for an entire month. I tried to explain that I didn't think it was feasible because I work from home a lot, and having kids in the apartment all day would make it extremely stressful. She said she understood, but then immediately added, "But you're always in the city and have this amazing apartment. You can totally survive somewhere else for a month. You have a spare bedroom." I don't. I live in a 1-bedroom. My bed doubles as my guest space. My living room doubles as my office. There's literally no extra room. I told her I really couldn't accommodate her, but she didn't drop it. She started sending messages about how unfair it was that I had this perfect city life and wasn't willing to share it with her family. She kept bringing up things like, I've done so much for you in the past, and I've sacrificed a lot too. Maybe you could just give me this one time. I reminded her that favors and past sacrifices shouldn't obligate me to put myself in a situation that would be completely unmanageable. She got visibly upset and said I was being selfish and didn't care about her family's needs. Her husband even chimed in at one point in a group text, saying, "You don't really understand how hard it is for us right now. It's just a month. We won't mess anything up." At this point, I try to offer compromises. I suggested that maybe she could look for a short-term rental nearby, or even stay at a hotel that would have enough space for the kids, and I'd cover part of the cost. I thought that was fair, but she rejected it outright, saying it was not the same as staying in my apartment. She kept emphasizing how she deserved it more than me because her life is more stressful and her family needs a break. She even said, "You're young, single, and have your whole life ahead of you. Don't you think it's selfish to hoard your happiness when we're drowning?" I was genuinely taken aback. I don't think anyone's happiness is a zero-sum game, and I don't think my life being comfortable means I owe anyone a month in my home. I reminded her again that the apartment isn't even suitable for a family of 4 and that I work from home, which would make it impossible to accommodate her and her kids. She accused me of being cold and said I should rethink my priorities. The conversation ended with her storming out and saying that she hoped I would realize what family really means. Since then, things have been tense. My mom called me to ask what happened, and she seems to think I overreacted by not letting Emma stay. My friends all say I'm right, but the guilt from my sister's words is kind of eating at me. On one hand, I feel like she's being entitled, but on the other, I'm starting to question if I should have tried harder to find a way to make it work. I genuinely like my sister, and I want to help her if I can, but this feels extreme. I've never been asked to accommodate someone like this before, and it feels like the expectation is totally unreasonable. So Reddit, AITA for refusing to let my sister stay in my apartment for a month, even though she says she deserves it more than me. AITA for confronting my sister over something that ended up tearing our family apart. I, 32M, have always considered myself close to my family, especially my younger sister, Emily, 28F. Growing up, we were inseparable, but as adults, life got in the way, and we naturally drifted a bit. Despite that, I always made an effort to maintain contact. My parents live out of state, so family gatherings are rare and usually revolve around major holidays. Emily recently got engaged to her fiancé, Mark, and she's been over the moon. I was genuinely happy for her and tried to support her in any way I could, despite being busy with work and my own life. About 3 weeks ago, Emily called me excitedly to tell me she had booked a bridal shower. She explained it was going to be a small, intimate gathering with just family and a few close friends. She asked me if I wanted to help organize it, and I agreed, thinking it would be a nice way to reconnect. As I started helping, I noticed Emily was putting a lot of emphasis on keeping it perfect and had a very rigid idea of what the guest list should look like. At first, I thought she was just stressed about wedding planning, which is understandable. But things started to feel off when she began subtly excluding people I thought should be included. For instance, my best friend, Sarah, who Emily had met a few times and always said she liked, was suddenly too busy to invite. My cousin Jake, who I grew up with and is very close to me, was also mysteriously left off the list. I tried to brush it off, thinking Emily had her reasons, but as I helped more with the preparations, I started noticing a pattern. Anyone who had ever disagreed with Emily about something trivial or had opinions she didn't agree with was either being left off the guest list or pushed to the back in terms of responsibilities. I mentioned it to her once, carefully asking if she really wanted to exclude some of our closest family members. She brushed me off, saying she wanted the event to be stress-free and didn't want any drama. Fast forward to the week of shower. I'd spent hours helping with decorations, favors, and even a custom playlist. I'd also invited my friend Sarah quietly, thinking Emily wouldn't mind since it was supposed to be a friendly, small gathering. The morning of the shower, Emily found out Sarah was coming and completely lost it. She accused me of trying to undermine her, of turning her shower into something it wasn't supposed to be, and of disrespecting her wishes. I tried to explain that my intention was simply to include someone who genuinely cares about both of us and has been supportive, but she refused to listen. Things escalated. Emily began yelling in front of other family members who had already arrived, calling me selfish, controlling, and impossible to deal with. I stayed calm and explained my reasoning again, and that's when our parents stepped in. My mom tried to mediate and told Emily that I was only trying to help, and Emily completely snapped at her too, calling her judgment biased and out of touch. It got so heated that some of the guests left early. After the shower, Emily refused to speak to me. I tried sending texts and emails explaining that my only goal was to support her and make the day enjoyable for everyone, but she continued to ignore me. Mark also messaged me saying that Emily felt betrayed and didn't want me involved in the wedding anymore. My parents are upset because they think both of us handled this poorly, but they're leaning towards Emily's side since the fallout happened in front of everyone. It's been 3 weeks now, and the only family member I've spoken to is my cousin Jake, who agrees that Emily overreacted and that it could have been handled better by both of us. I still feel guilty for the tension caused at the shower, but I also feel like I was trying to do the right thing and maintain inclusivity for people who care about her. Some of my friends have said I should reach out with a more formal apology, but I'm torn because I honestly don't feel like I did anything wrong. Others think I need to accept that Emily doesn't want me involved and back off. So AITA here for including some of my sister didn't want at her bridal shower and ultimately causing a huge family conflict? Or was Emily overreacting and being unreasonable? The fallout has made me rethink my role in the family and whether it's possible to maintain a healthy relationship with Emily while she holds onto this grudge. I genuinely miss my sister and hope that eventually we can repair things, but I don't know how without either seeming like I'm conceding that I was entirely at fault or escalating things further. Has anyone ever dealt with something like this, where family expectations and personal boundaries clash so publicly? I'm at a loss. Character count: 6,524. Would you like me to create a second, alternative story in a similar style, so you could compare which feels more viral Reddit-worthy? AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after a years-long feud over our inheritance? I, 32F, come from a family where money has always been a delicate subject. My father passed away unexpectedly about 5 years ago, leaving my sister, 30F, and me as the main heirs. Growing up, we had a fairly normal relationship, occasional sibling arguments, but nothing out of the ordinary. After my father's death, things started to unravel. My sister, who has always been more assertive and, frankly, manipulative, somehow convinced my mother to give her control over the family estate, which included the house my parents had lived in for decades. I was left with a fraction of the inheritance that, according to my understanding of the will, should have been equally split. I tried to reason with her and my mother, but my sister painted me as greedy and ungrateful. Every conversation ended with her either yelling at me or threatening to cut me out completely. I tried mediation, lawyers, everything, but the family dynamic had already been poisoned. My mother, caught in the middle, essentially told me to pick my battles, which really meant don't rock the boat with your sister. I thought I could make peace over time, but every attempt was met with manipulation, gaslighting, and emotional guilt trips. Fast forward to last year, my sister got engaged. She immediately started including my mother and me in wedding planning, but in a way that felt performative. Invitations were sent early with subtle pressure to RSVP yes immediately. She set up a registry and repeatedly asked me what I wanted from it. Even though I'd made it clear, I didn't feel comfortable participating in a wedding that felt like a stage for her to display our family wealth and control. My mother urged me to attend to keep the peace, but I started thinking about what it would mean for my own mental health to be around her for an entire weekend. Things came to a head when she invited me to a planning brunch with her fiancé, her friends, and my mother. The entire event felt like a performance where I was expected to smile, compliment her choices, and offer advice. When I tried to express that some decisions felt insensitive, she literally rolled her eyes, muttered, "Of course you'd say that," and moved on without addressing any of my points. That's when I realized she wasn't actually interested in my input or reconciliation. She wanted me to bow to her vision of perfection. A month ago, she officially sent the wedding invitation. It was lavish, over the top, and incredibly expensive. She included a note about how everyone is expected to participate fully in celebrating this milestone, and suggested I book travel and accommodations immediately. At this point, I decided I could no longer engage. I wrote her an email explaining that I could not attend due to ongoing family tensions and emotional distress, and that I wished her happiness but needed to prioritize my own mental well-being. I sent it with a lot of hesitation, knowing it would cause a stir. The response I got from her and my mother was explosive. My sister accused me of being petty, selfish, and ruining the family dynamic, while my mother called me disrespectful and cold. The most painful part is that my mother threatened to not attend the wedding herself if I wasn't there, implying that my absence would ruin their day. Friends and extended family started sending me messages asking why I wasn't going, which made me feel guilty. I explained briefly that there were long-standing issues and that attending would be emotionally harmful, but most people either don't understand or think I'm exaggerating. Since then, my sister has actively badmouthed me to family members and mutual friends, painting me as the villain. I've received texts from distant relatives asking me to just get over it, or claiming that I'm holding grudges unnecessarily. I keep reminding myself that my decision is about protecting my mental health, not punishing anyone, but the constant backlash is exhausting. I genuinely feel conflicted because I know weddings are meant to be a family celebration, and part of me wishes things could be different. However, the trauma and tension I would experience in being around her and the rest of the family make me feel like attending is an option. I've also considered a compromise, sending a gift or a video message, but I worry that any gesture might be seen as conditional or insincere. So, Reddit, AITA for refusing to attend my sister's wedding after years of her manipulation, emotional abuse, and disputes over our inheritance. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.